Introduce Tim Sovay from CreatorIQ, Andrew Strickman from Realtor.com, and Austin Schumacher from Lyft. And that's a terrible introduction, so why don't you guys each just take a second to give the room some background on what you do at your respective organizations.
Sure, actually I thought that was great. But
I got your names right.
You got it right. That's right. I'm Austin Schumacher. I oversee entertainment marketing at Lyft. I've been at Lyft for about 4.5 years, so I haven't always had this role. It kind of evolved over a period of time, but for the last 3 years I've been focused on building out the entertainment practice, which encompasses entertainment partnerships and activations, our product placements and integrations, branded content, and influencer marketing.
I'm Andrew Strickman, head up brand and creative at Realtor.com. I've been there for about 5 years, but I started my career in storytelling about 27 years ago as a journalist, and was in journalism, newspaper and magazine journalism, until this thing called the internet came along, then got into digital content, the written kind, back before video streaming was a thing. And bounced around a little bit, ran an agency, influencer marketing agency 15 years ago called Ammo, which was acquired by Aegis, and then sort of went brand side and worked for Yahoo and now at Realtor.com.
Cool. And then Tim Sovay, CEO of CreatorIQ. So we're a software platform that helps actually a lot of companies in here, but enterprises scale their influencer marketing efforts via social CRM, workflow, and data analytics. But I know you guys already all know this because you saw our presentation earlier today. And yeah, so we obviously sit on the technology side. We're really trying to help brands, publishers, and agencies figure out this crazy world of influencer marketing and branded content. And my background, I've kind of seen it from all sides. I started on the brand side at Walt Disney Studios, working in feature film marketing. Started a company called The Audience in 2011, which was an early days influencer marketing social agency, and then moved over to the technology side. I was actually an early customer at The Audience of CreatorIQ and came over to the company earlier this year.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So, Austin, I'm going to start with you. I want to kind of start with a more macro picture before we get into the talking turkey of ROI. How are you advocating internally for investments in branded content versus traditional advertising? Or is there really even a difference in your organization?
So, the company's about 5 years old, and from the beginning we were really a performance marketing focused company, and now we have an integrated team that encompasses traditional and digital entertainment and content. So it took a long time to get there. I think one thing that kind of put us over the edge was 3 or so years ago, Conan O'Brien took a Lyft with Kevin Hart and Ice Cube and created this incredible 9-minute long video that still garnered like 30 million views.
That one, right?
We did not pay for that. That was totally organic. Actually, we met Conan after that, and his first question was like, "Where's my check?" But we still haven't paid him anything. It was interesting because we look at branded content today as really higher funnel and driving awareness, and we've experimented, and we'll talk about that later, with what we've done with the content. But at the beginning, we thought this is a great awareness driver. But one thing that was really interesting was when we looked at driver applicants. Driver applicants, when they sign up to become a driver, they have to, or they don't have to, but they can put where they heard about Lyft. And we were seeing hundreds, which at the time was a really big number, of people saying Conan O'Brien, or Kevin Hart, Ice Cube, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is actually immediately driving acquisition for drivers. So I think that helped convince our two co-founders that this was not only interesting from a cultural standpoint, but also could potentially drive acquisition for us. Again, we don't look at this kind of content now as really acquisition driving on the passenger or driver side, but it was a way to convince the team then to invest. And so since then we've developed an entire entertainment program. So that helped. But I think in general, we need to continue experimenting. We need to tell the executive team and other leadership in the company that not every piece of content is going to be a winner, and it's okay to experiment and it's okay to fail. It took us a long time until we hit on this other series called Undercover Lyft that's been successful for us. And so, yeah, I would just say experimentation is really important. And now we look at this sort of integrated, marketing organization that encompasses content. And so I don't think content necessarily sits outside of advertising. It's a very big part of it.
And I think we actually have a reel of some.
We do. We have a reel that our internal creative team put together. This is another important piece of internal marketing for us. It's a great way to merchandise the wins and explain to the executive, show the executive team all the kinds of marketing that we can do. So this was sort of an end of year piece that our creative team put together last year.
Marketing.
That's right. Well, we showed it to the whole company, but this was really for senior leadership, showing like, look at all this awesome stuff. Look at it all together. It looks fantastic.
Cool.
Hopefully you guys agree.
Can we play?
So this is how they want to do it. All right, Lyft.
Girl out. Mama say she gonna lose me. She prayed the angels out on duty. Preacher can't even rebuke me. No, no. Born a sinner and I'm about to sin again tonight. You gon' have to forgive me, yeah. I'ma raise hell until I reach every door.
Did you see that?
Hey, hey, yeah. Hey, yeah. I'd have been to the water. I'd have been baptized down in new water. Tonight we about to turn the fuck up. She didn't come to hear me preach. She just wanna dance, huh? She didn't come to hear me preach. She just wanna dance, huh? She don't wanna hear me preach. She just wanna dance, huh? She didn't wanna hear me preach. She just wanna dance. Go on and dance, honey. Go on and dance, honey. Yeah.
Take that, Lyft.
And one quick side note about the music in that's by an artist named Sir the Baptist, who we've done a lot of work with over the last 6 months. Commissioned him to write a song for the animated piece that you saw there called June. And he was a former Lyft driver and actually took about a year driving for Lyft to build out his team. So he met like half of his management team driving for Lyft. He met his current girlfriend, and now he's signed to Atlantic Records on a big worldwide tour. So we love that story. You know,
Sounds like your next piece of content.
that's right.
Documentary
We're talking about it. Yeah.
So Andrew, I want to throw it over to you with another kind of more scene-setting question. So it just feels like we've talked about this in a couple different panels, that a lot of branded content isn't getting seen by its intended audience or much audience at all. So thoughts on why brands are missing the mark here and getting their messages in front of the right folks?
You know, I'm less interested in talking about why other brands aren't doing it, and more just interested in about the evolution that we've taken in the last 5 years. When I got to the company, we had never marketed to consumers before. We're a 17-year-old company at that point. We're now 21, 22 years old. And for a very long time, all we did was market to the industry, which is where our revenue is generated from. And when I got to the company, it was specifically to rebrand Realtor.com as a consumer destination. And we started out small. We found an agency that's continued with us until today, Perrin O'Dell, New York. And we started small with them, and we shot 3 video advertisements that were going to be sort of the core of a display-driven but video-supported campaign. And that worked so well that we took the brand to television, and for the last 3.5, 4 years, we've been an always-on TV advertiser. And it was a few years ago that we started realizing that our TV content wasn't necessarily reaching other audiences, and specifically that elusive millennial, which in our business is an analog for first-time homebuyers. And actually, over the last couple of years, first-time homebuyers have become the majority of homebuyers in the United States. And so we decided to take a big dive into branded content and developed a 5-episode web series with Elizabeth Banks. That was a real turning point, I think, for the company and our marketing, but it also was an incredible learning experience. And one of the things we learned after we created this content, we knew we were going to have to promote it and pay to promote it, but what we didn't quite think about ahead of time was that a 2.5-minute episode isn't great in pre-roll. It's not even great in your Facebook feed. And so what we did was we took the series, we created a 30-second Hollywood trailer, and that is sort of what introduced the series to our core audience, who we knew was not seeing the brand on TV, and we went to them where they were spending their time, whether that was YouTube, Facebook, Hulu, and all of the other on-demand platforms that they were consuming their content from. And so I think we have the trailer for that video series right now.
There is nothing more awesome than taking ownership of your new dream home! Now's the fun part.
That was our calling card.
Being from YouTube, I love this because we always say make a promotional asset to promote your series. So thank you for doing that. Very $50 to do it. So Tim, over to you. I want to talk kind of closing this section. On a macro level, how are you guys making sense of all the data out there and really guiding clients towards informed decision? It feels like there's a little bit of paralysis sometimes in all of the different ways you can look at audience targeting and ROI. So where do you really start at CreatorIQ to make sense of that for clients?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more critical as advertisers are more demanding on knowing about the audiences they're trying to reach, the right people to partner with. So we're really trying to arm our partners with audience demographic and psychographic data ahead of a campaign on the pre-sale side. So on the demographic side, demo makeup, geo, gender, psychographic side on interests, brand affinities, and overlap category interest, because oftentimes just because a creator or a partner of yours develops content in a specific category doesn't necessarily mean that their audience maps to that category. Oftentimes there's a lot of relevance there, so we're trying to dive deeper into giving our partners a better understanding of who's actually watching this content. And then on the performance side, we're really looking at historicals. I mean, we were just talking about this in our panel with Sean Duras, but as these campaigns move from reach to engagement to advocacy, really understanding what the dominant platforms are for a lot of these creators and a lot of these partners. Oftentimes they do have a single dominant platform where they maybe overperform on YouTube and underperform on Twitter or vice versa. And then providing some forecasting tools. So I know John from our team talked about this in our session, but really trying to get the guessing game out of organic performance, looking at the last 30, 60, 90 days of performance around their content, really trying to get within a pretty good range of what organic performance will actually be. So then you can layer on your paid media strategy, but you've got a good understanding of being able to take this to, if you're a publisher or an agency, you can take this to a brand and have some pretty good knowledge about what you can get out of an organic guarantee.
That's a great transition. I mean, we were talking in our prep calls, and I think many people in other panels, it's come up around this notion of the assembly line being broken, that this old way of creative moves to media is really not working in today's landscape. So Andrew, can you talk us through, and maybe use Elizabeth Banks or that as an example or another, of just how you guys are taking platform particulars into account, and are you building multiple assets when you're coming up with a content series, one for each platform, or are you putting all your weight because you want metrics behind one piece?
Yep.
How are you guys thinking about that assembly line and the creative process with media distribution?
I think we can start, and I think using Elizabeth is a good example because we've been working with her for 3 years. We only have her for 4 or 5 days a year, and what's important is that when we go in to work with her as sort of the star of our campaigns, we have to have a very, very solid idea of what kind of content is going to come out the other end of that process. And so in the past, we've shot Instagram-specific content with her. We've shot Facebook-specific content. The directors that we've chosen to work with understand the digital formats. They understand what's different about them. And honestly, not only are the formats different, whether it's vertical video or square video and optimizing for that, but the audience who's consuming those different formats is very different. And so while our TV commercials may appeal to a mass audience, our digital content tends to be much more targeted either to a demographic audience like first-time homebuyers who are millennials, or to an NBA audience who are fans of our work with the Golden State Warriors. And we're constantly sort of rethinking who our audience is in relation to what we're looking to accomplish. And at the end of the day, that's what drives the content decisions that we make. But we never put all of our eggs in one basket.
And Austin, how is that the same or different at Lyft?
Yeah, we've
orchestration.
Yeah, so we've definitely evolved our distribution strategy. I think early on, various stakeholders want to take one asset and promote that single asset, or just put it out there and see what happens. And it's better if you have a ton of views on a single YouTube video. But I think everyone's starting to understand now that it's really all about the aggregate, and it's about creating platform-specific content. So for a series like Undercover Lyft, we're now creating platform-specific assets to put out, whether it's Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and that is obviously much more effective because you can create content that actually makes sense for each audience and each platform. And so we've moved more to that model, and it's definitely. It took a while to convince the teams internally that it's important.
It's a lot more work, right? I mean, how are you guys structured to do that?
Yeah, it's a lot more work. So our media agency is very helpful in kind of pulling a lot of that together. Our internal teams now are at a point where we have a great internal creative team who can help produce all these assets. So yeah, you definitely need the resources, but at the end of the day, it's important so that you're creating efficient content as well as just great creative.
And Tim, on the more macro level, I think both of these guys, they're on a panel about this. They're fairly advanced in expertise. Are the strategies of, multi-platform, multi-asset that they're discussing kind of representative of what you're seeing on a macro level?
Yeah. I mean, these things are getting much more complex. Just looking at our data, we've seen over the last about 2 years, the number of pieces of content in each of these campaigns grow by about 4x, from an average of 20 pieces of content in a campaign to up to about 80. Wow. And there's also there's much more diversity in the number of platforms that our partners are using. And I think Instagram is sitting there at 1A. Facebook and YouTube have been the steadies over the last couple years. Snapchat saw a really big spike in 2016. That's dropped, at least from our research in 2017, maybe due to lack of analytics and insights that these other platforms are providing. And interestingly, we've seen a really big spike in Pinterest usage this year in 2017. So that's one that we're following right now.
I just want to add one thing as well. No matter how much planning you do in advance, you can't always plan for everything. And this year, one of the decisions we made was to launch our new campaign, which launched in April, with an anthemic 60-second launch spot on TV. We put weight behind that for a couple of weeks, and we put it on YouTube and all the other digital platforms. And it was the comments to that video on YouTube around the music that we created originally with Squeaky Clean, a music house in New York, that led us to decide to create a full-length song, which is now being released next week on Pandora and Spotify and Apple Music. And so we're not only trying to reach our consumers, but we're listening to them and trying to respond to what they're looking for. They were demanding, they wanted that song. They were convinced it was LCD Sound System. One guy, there was arguments back and forth.
Realtor.com and LCD.
Yeah, I mean, one guy found, some other recording artist from like 3 years ago that had a song that sounded somewhat like it, and he's like, this is the guy. So we took our YouTube insights and turned it into another media asset.
That's cool. Well, it's a great testament that you guys are flexible enough to save budget to do that mid-year.
Yeah.
I think one other note about creating platform-specific content is it's obviously much easier to do that up front and plan for that up front. When we would create these Undercover Lyft episodes, which is like celebrity-driven content, our paid acquisition team would ask us, can we use this? Can we create a cut down and slap on an ad at the end or a download Lyft tag at the end and use this for DR? And we tested it, but really at the end of the day, that content was not designed to do that. And so being able to plan ahead and say, all right, well, this asset might drive, this business leader might be more relevant
Right,
for
having
this
different
audience.
expectations.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we definitely learned. It's not that content was bad for DR, but it didn't perform better than than other content that was specifically designed to acquire users. And so, anyways, planning ahead for that stuff is much
And what
easier.
about emerging opportunities like OTT or SVOD? Are those things that you guys feel pretty bullish on as brands, worth your time, or kind of hot or not, if you will, on OTT and SVOD?
We're testing right now. We have a relatively new partnership with Kevin Hart and his new network, LOL, which is an SVOD platform. And so we funded a production of sort of like an undercover Lyft, but he made it a lot funnier, being Kevin Hart. And so it's an interesting model. The first episode came out 2 weeks ago, and his network launches on the 3rd, where we'll see the rest of that series. So interesting for us. It's an experiment for sure, but so far, just given the first episode, we're really excited about it.
And are you expecting to make kind of revenue off that? Are you viewing it? This has been a hot topic the last couple of days around the brands as studios model. So, I mean, that sounds like you're directly funding and producing, but are you expecting residuals and kind of revenue, or
not
is it
yet?
marketing?
This is still new territory for us. We're not yet ready to enter new business models, but it's something that down the line could definitely be interesting from a revenue generating standpoint, but not yet. This right now for us is just purely advertising, and we want to align with great talent. We want to align with great content, and it's really more top of the funnel metrics driving for us.
Yeah, I mean, we're bullish on all of these new platforms, but we're definitely a little more hesitant given the relative level of our ability to invest in things that are proven and show performance versus things that aren't. And with the closed platforms, whether it's Hulu or some of the other ones, not understanding what the audience actually is. Sure, you might know how many total subscribers there are, but actually understanding more about viewership for a particular show, for brand integration, something like that, is really challenging, particularly for a digital company. Everything that we do is measured. That's not to say that Hulu hasn't been a great partner, because in the interruptive format, in the ad-supported model of Hulu, when we advertise on Hulu, we don't expect anyone to click through on the sort of the banner ad that runs with our pre-roll. But those people who do, who interrupt what they were going to watch, whether it's Grey's Anatomy or Game of Thrones or whatever, come to our site and spend like 5 times as much time on our site as anyone who comes from another platform. So we know it's a highly qualified audience. We just haven't figured out quite how to dig in with them yet.
And Tim, are these guys or SVOD, are you in discussion about data sharing, or it feels like most of the headlines are about how protective Netflix and others are about any metrics? So how are you guys?
I think most people in this room know that they're pretty closed platforms, right? So we're focused much more on the open platform space. There's still a long way to go, even with social platforms. I know we'll get into this a little bit around, what we can even see on an organic side versus, say, an ads API. Although Instagram did just announce a update to their analytics API about 2 hours ago. So things like impressions, views, et cetera, are coming to Instagram like today-ish, or the next couple weeks. So that was breaking news and completely changed my last talking point for today. So things are evolving, but the OTT and SVOD platforms, like Andrew said, are pretty closed or walled gardens right now.
So we talked already a little bit about working media, but just to drill into that topic a little bit about kind of how you guys win budget. So it feels like people, you never make a television ad and not run media to support the television ad, but it feels like people make branded content all the time and not put any media behind to support it. So Andrew, do you guys do that? Like, do you put paid behind the majority of branded content you make, or how do you make the distinction internally of when to fight for that budget?
Yeah, fighting for, I'm incredibly lucky in that because we're a digital company, sort of at the executive level, even up to our corporate parent News Corp, they understand that brand marketing is very different than performance marketing. And so there's a whole performance marketing team that sits alongside my brand marketing team. So the objectives that we are being held to are a lot squishier but they're just as important to the overall success of our business. And given the amount of money that we invest in producing the content that we create, it's very, very difficult for us to just put it out there and let it sit and not do anything with it. Our social followings aren't big enough that even using our own social channels to drive attention to that content is going to do a whole lot. Plus, those are people who've already raised their hand, said, I'm a fan of Realtor.com. What we're trying to do is reach new audiences. So whether it's putting paid media support behind it, when we work with Elizabeth, when she posts about the content that we've created together, we'll often boost her posts to get it to more of her audience. It's the partnerships that we do and making sure that the video content we create with our partners is flexible enough to live both in their world as well as in our world. But we have to invest behind the things that we're spending so much money to create.
And is that the same at Lyft? I mean, I feel like you guys have had a number of viral hits. Has that created almost an impossible expectation for you internally that that's just the norm now and you don't have to pay to play?
Yeah, so that goes back to, and Andrew, I totally agree with you. I mean, at this point, we do that as well. We did get lucky after some experimenting, and we landed on the series that performed incredibly well organically, and we had lots of great earned media from that. But over time, there's going to be some fatigue, and you also have to. I think you have to make a decision at some point that. If you're going to invest, like you said, Andrew, if you're going to invest in a piece of content that you feel like is great and you actually want people to see it, you have to put some paid behind it, and you should do that. And so we've definitely taken a little bit of a tack, and our executive team would say, well, you just create another viral hit, just like why don't you just do that again, and we did it again, and then we kept doing it, and then we started to see some diminishing returns, and I think that first of all. We have to keep evolving the creative because people need to maintain interest, but also putting paid media behind it will introduce the series or the piece of content to new audiences, and you can obviously do that efficiently and kind of dial it in a little bit across each platform, which we've been doing.
Yeah, I mean we're still in the business of raising awareness for our brand, and we don't feel like we can depend on organic interest to do that, and we're in a very, very, very competitive marketplace. Our biggest competitors are spending $75 million, $100 million a year on media, and so we need to play at that level, but we also need to make sure that the creative, the quality of the content is breaking through in a different way.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the organic or kind of your own audience. That's one of the things we see at YouTube as a best practice, that brands are starting to exclude their subscribers from any targeting.
We absolutely do.
For the same reason, to say, I already have
Or we
them,
create separate
I don't want
campaigns
them.
for them versus the new audiences.
Yeah. So influencers, we've talked at almost every panel that's come up, but we wanted to raise that on this panel as well with a more kind of distribution and ROI. So Tim, from a macro or data background, before we get into some case studies with these guys, what are you seeing about trends in the space when it comes to influencer campaigns and brands?
Yeah, so I think the way I like to think about it is we're moving from what I call mercenaries to ambassadors and really progressive brands, and we talked about this in our breakout again, around developing long-term relationships with creators. And it's very similar to what celebrity or athlete endorsement deals have been for years and years. But the idea of lighting up a social creator for a single campaign that may be a little intrusive to that creator's audience. They've never seen that brand before. They don't really understand the correlation. As opposed to building that trust over time, I think it does wonders for the brand. It does wonders for the audience, and it does wonders for the creator. I can tell you that creators want to work with, I think, Sean, you can tell me I'm wrong, fewer brands, longer term opportunities. It doesn't mean that there's an always on campaign. You can light them up over tentpole events, but audiences start to understand that there's a real relationship between that creator and that brand, and that there is context to that audience. And then just from a data side, I mean, like I was saying earlier, these things are getting more complex. So there's obviously a lot more posts that are going into a campaign. We've also seen the number of creators per campaign move from about 5 to about 18 now in 2017. Speaks a lot to some kind of industry buzzwords that are going around via micro-influencers or that magic middle, right, where these creators have smaller audiences but are more loyal. They don't have the massive casual fans who may or may not be interested in their content anymore. So there's definitely more complexity on that side of things as well.
Yeah, what he said.
Austin, what are you, I mean, obviously you're saying Kevin Hart, you saw some mainstream celebrities in that reel. What are your thoughts on micro-influencers or scaled campaigns? Is that something you guys are doing instead or moving towards or in addition to, or how do you view the two different strategies?
Yeah, so we like taking a hybrid approach, and I think there's value in both sides. And I agree that there shouldn't be like this sort of mercenary approach. We don't want to just do a single post with an influencer and not work with that person again. So I think there's a large part of what we do on the influencer side is develop long-term relationships. So that might mean something like we had an episode of Undercover Lyft with Demi Lovato recently, or last year. We recently had her promote this new product of ours called Round Up and Donate, where passengers can round up their fare and donate the difference to a charity. And then we had an integration or a placement in one of her music videos, and we have a great relationship with her team. And so those types of things I think can be incredibly valuable over time. At the same time, it's difficult to get celebrities to always say, okay, yes, absolutely, I'll post at this time for this campaign. It might be very expensive as well. And so we've leveraged influencer agencies really to tap into the micro-influencer network to help promote campaigns and approach it from both sides. So for Pride, for example, which is a big moment for us every year across the country, we had a piece of content to promote, and we're also promoting this Round Up and Donate in partnership with HRC. And so we wanted to, reach out to our contacts and influencers who we've built relationships with, but also work with an agency that has its internal resources who can say, all right, well, we'll get 15 influencers to post here. By the way, they're all using your brand or using your service, which is incredibly important to us as well. And so we were able to approach it from both sides. So I think we had like 2 influencers who we'd done work with in the past who posted for us, and then we had a series of micro-influencers create videos and also static content.
It's like when you need a lot of impressions or key tentpole moment is when you go all in across the board.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's from sort of a logistics and from a logistics standpoint, and also to reach a larger audience. And we can say, to a micro or to an influencer agency, we want to, reach out to folks who are particularly passionate about LGBT issues, and instead of, kind of going through a Rolodex and trying to sort that out.
I mean, that sounds awesome, but also incredibly complex. So what's your entertainment ecosystem look like? Obviously, there's a lot of folks in the room that I think you already work with or might work with, but how are you sourcing partners in this space or evaluating who to work with when it comes to creators and investment deals?
So it was just me for too long, and so over the last 2 years we've built out an internal team. So we actually just recently brought someone over from CAA. Sorry, guys. No, he's great, and he's fantastic, and he's going to oversee all of our product placement, integration, influencer work, and then we have another person internally who helps oversee all the events and activations. We have an agency, a talent agency that we just started working with, who will help with product placements, integrations, and talent booking. We also have another product placement agency in LA, the marketing arm, David Brown folks, and we have a consultant in LA who helps connect us to interesting folks in the influencer world, and we have an entertainment PR agency. So it sounds like a lot of agencies, but I think it's necessary if you really want to invest in entertainment in the kind of work that we're really excited about. I think it's important to have the resources and have the team to help support that.
So something to add to that real fast, and you hit on it with finding partners who already use your product. Every company in here has brand advocates. It's just about knowing them and surfacing that data through your user data. Everyone in this room has user emails, customer emails, et cetera. There's technology out there to surface that and find. You don't have to necessarily go to third parties to find those partners to work with. Oftentimes, they may be already using your product or a fan of what you do every day. And it's about connecting those advocates and understanding, advocates to your brand, understanding what power they have on their own social networks. And they do tend to be more quote unquote micro, but they add up very quickly and become very powerful.
Yeah. So Andrew, just to close out this influencer section, obviously very different business model than Lyft, and you know, kind of the frequency of which someone, I think you said it, someone buys a new house roughly every 7 years.
Yep, that's about right.
So very different than someone, for Austin, who you're trying to get to use Lyft every day.
Yeah.
So how do your different business models reflect in your influencer strategy and the teams you use to find the right creators?
Yeah, I mean, it's both a blessing and a curse, but we're not a transactional business. I mean, we are supporting a lot of transactions in the trillions of dollars, but the way we make money is when a consumer fills out a lead form on our website, and I'm sure that every single person in this room is like, why would I ever fill out a lead form on my website? But they do, and we sell that lead to realtors, and a smart realtor will contact that person and engage them in a business conversation. So our goal, my objective is to get as many new people into our funnel as possible. We're doing a lot we've been doing a lot over the last few years to build out a product that is not only for someone in the market for a home or in the market to sell their home, but also everything surrounding that home, whether it's home improvement. There's a lot of people who are interested in the real estate industry. There are also a lot of people who are interested in celebrity homes, things like that. We have a 12-person editorial team. So we've got a really great product. 12-person editorial team? 12-person editorial team. One video producer on that 12-person editorial team. So we're still sort of a written content company in that regard. But our goal is very different, and because of that, when we work with micro-influencers, which we've just started doing, we are looking for people who are in the market to buy a home, who have a following, whether that's 20,000 people or 70,000 people, who want to tell a genuine story about the trials and tribulations and joys and humor behind finding a home, and hopefully Realtor.com can be a part of that process. So we're sort of just dipping our toe into the micro-influencer space. And at the sort of other end of the spectrum with Elizabeth Banks, when we were working with POD New York on coming up with sort of a campaign strategy, and this was pre-News Corp, and they said, we think it might be time for a celebrity spokesperson. We went through a very long list of celebrities that we thought could align very well with the brand and what our creative strategy had been to date, which was using humor to tell stories about very serious topics. And over time, over a very short amount of time, we landed on Elizabeth, and not only was she a triple threat, writer, director, producer in her own right, amazing comedian, but she was really a digital native. She had been creating her own digital content. She had been part of the team that was part of the acting team and producing team that was first originating content on Funny or Die. She had her own blog where she was producing her own videos, as well as having just a huge social following. And we knew all of those things would contribute to what we did with her. The first year it was the Elizabeth Banks story featuring Realtor.com though, and what was great about her and her team was that we really worked hard with them to sort of flip that model. So she became the face and name behind the brand, but it was still the Realtor.com story. And now the research that we do shows that she is an analog for Realtor.com. People see her on screen, they're like, oh, that's the woman from Realtor.com. And so we feel like we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. It's probably a little bit more of a runway with her, and we're excited to continue working with her. But it's very important that sort of every step in that process, from the micro-influencer to our partners who we really consider influencers, to their audience, to someone like Elizabeth, they're all part of sort of the ecosystem for us.
Well, that's a great transition to our last section here, the holy grail, the measurement and ROI question. So this is for all of you guys. You can decide who wants to go first. But what's the one metric that you really wish was a common language in the brand space? And do you think we as an industry are making any progress toward a standardization like that, like common currency or common value? Do you want to start?
Sure. So for us, we talked early on a lot about awareness being the number one metric that we need to measure through this content. And obviously, that's not the only one that you should be measuring. And engagement has become the most important one for us. We want to make sure that people are actually enjoying the content, sharing the content,
That's like
talking
sharing
about the content.
likes.
Yeah.
Do you do like an indexed engagement or something internally?
We do, and I think right now that's sort of the key focus, and I think if we had to pick one, that would be the most interesting for us. But that being said, we want to measure different things. We want to measure affinity. We want to measure all kinds of metrics that aren't necessarily just about awareness or just about engagement. So. To answer the second part of your question, I don't know if we're headed towards a standardization. I haven't seen that yet, but I think right now engagement is incredibly important. But we don't want to just look at a single metric in evaluating the success of a program.
Yeah, I would agree with Austin. I think that if we look to find that holy grail, that silver bullet, that implies that the objective for everything that you do is exactly the same, and from a brand perspective, we look at our entire campaign ecosystem to raise awareness and brand affinity and consideration, familiarity. And then we can look to individual pieces of content or individual content campaigns to understand what that did for traffic, what that did for app downloads. And what's important to us is now that the technology allows us to say, someone saw our ad 2 days ago and they've now come back to our site. We're not expecting a direct video to click mentality for any consumer. I think that what our goal is to stick in people's minds so that when they have that moment in time that they're ready to come to our site, they're going to remember that and come as a result of that. Or they're going to see us in search results and remember, oh, I remember that funny piece of content I saw with Elizabeth Banks 3 weeks ago. I'm going to Realtor.com instead of to one of our competitors.
So you guys are doing pretty advanced media mix modeling and attribution funneling and all that stuff, it sounds like.
We're diving into attribution. For a technology company that's 20 plus years old, we're finally diving into sort of lifetime value of a user and understanding how all of those metrics fit together. I wouldn't say that we're sophisticated from a media mix modeling perspective, but we're definitely very sophisticated in understanding what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I would answer this a little differently, more from the insights or analytics side. And sorry, Mary, but we actually need the platform's help in this. For us to standardize what an impression or a video view or any other key engagement metric is, we really need the distribution platforms to come.
We think our definition's right.
Yeah, I know you. YouTube is number one in this room. But when YouTube and Facebook can't even agree on what a video view is, it's really hard for our industry to be able to present that or sell that to advertisers, right? And like I said earlier, there's some challenges to what's available to organic APIs versus ads APIs, and we don't have to get too detailed in that. But in order for this to really succeed in a scaled way, we're going to need measurement, and we're going to need consistent measurement, and that comes from we rely on the platforms for that data.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so last question. So given that it's the last question of Elevate, at least on stage, one prediction or thought a year from now when we're hopefully all back here at the Montage, what do you think we'll be talking about that didn't come up in the last 2 days? Or a prediction, just in general, of where the space is going.
Something that I'm really interested in and something that I've been seeing more brands do is co-producing content and funding productions that might not necessarily live on their channels. So I don't know if Repair's in the room, but a lot of the work, kind of similar work that he's doing around film financing with brands behind it, I think is really an interesting trend, and I think we'll see a lot more of it.
Cool.
I think from a platform perspective, all of the numbers around engagement right now are saying that brands are not taking great enough advantage, and we haven't figured out yet how to take advantage of Instagram. There's clearly great success stories out there, but I think this will be the year of brand Instagram integration in a way that we haven't seen yet.
I don't know if this will happen in the next 12 months, but I'm extremely bullish on Amazon in this space. I think Amazon's the sleeping giant that no one's really talking about. They have the user data. More than anything, when I talk about Holy Grail, I think about direct attribution. Social commerce has tried and failed for I don't know how many years, and if there's one company in this world that can do that, it's going to be Amazon. They announced Spark last week, which I think is, I know there's some Amazon folks in the room, so I don't want to speak for you, but really interesting, kind of a cross between Instagram, Pinterest, commerce site. I'm probably doing a terrible job explaining it. There's a lot to overcome from adoption and usage and everything else, but I think Amazon can be a major player in this space moving forward.
Cool. Well, any questions in the room before we send each other back to the breakouts?
Anybody? Or you go speak amongst yourselves? Going?
I think everyone wants out of this room, which okay, well, just to recap, thank you guys. The 4 questions that we'll be talking about in the room are the assembly line. So how should organizations better integrate their processes to ensure distribution is considered from the beginning of a creative? External partners, how do both sides, whether it's production, creative agencies, or talent agencies, and brands ensure that there's alignment between brands and partners? And how do folks know to bring in the right groups at the right time and for what? Measurement, is there a shared measurement standard or metric for branded content? Can there be? And then finally, we want to close with that same question we just asked these panelists looking forward. So predictions for the next year in the branded content space and where we're all heading. So that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you to this panel.